Hey, welcome back. So last time we started with just a breakdown melody and some pads, and we made that into a full-on groove drop section. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna take that and make a basic arrangement for an A section, i.e. what happens after the initial drop when the bass comes in, when the sub bass comes in, all the way up to the breakdown. And we're gonna put that together just starting with the elements we have and building out to get a pretty solid A section together that's both emotional and leads us into where we're going with our drop. So come on, let's get started. Jump in with me. Okay, so where we left off last time, we had two sections essentially. We started from this. So that's the lead and the pads with the filter up. And then we made this part that has a bass line and some basic percussion right here. Okay, cool, satisfying drop. So from there, what I want to do next is actually kind of take this and make a structure out of it, because this is where we want to get to in the song. How do we get ourselves there? So the way I want to plan this out, first off, is to go and move our parts way over. All of our parts over there and making sure not to screw this up. Okay, everybody's in the right place. Okay, so now we have a bunch of space, which is exactly what I wanted here. I'm going to kind of make this track, because Logic only gives you a lot of times a certain amount of area to work with. I'm going to give us about like 6 or 7 minutes at least of track here. So let's see, you can see up here what we're at. It's 5 minutes. Let's start off with making an end of the track at least like 6.5 minutes in, I'd say, or something like that. We don't really want to make the track over 7 minutes, likely for modern uplifting. So I'm going to put a marker here and say 7 minutes. So one of the first things I like to do when I'm arranging tracks in this way is actually to put in some markers just like this, just so I know like how far along I am. Of course, you don't want to get trapped into anything, but you also want to kind of give yourself a structure to work off of. So what I want to do here is actually put a marker for where the DJ intro would be, and then assuming the track was 7 minutes, I'm going to put another one for where the outro would be. 1 minute of intro and outro is fairly common. It's usually either 1 minute or 30 seconds these days for uplifting. So I'm going to start with 1 minute. So this will be the track start. And then we're going to do the first drop at 33 bars, which is about a minute into the track actually for an uplifter. So we're going to say, I'm going to say sub in, which is a way of essentially indicating that this is where our first drop in is. So then we have our breakdown stuff that's happening kind of around the 2 minute mark. We might move it, so I'm just going to put 2 minutes here as a marker. Going to 7 minutes, basically this is 6 minutes from there, so this will be a 1 minute outro if we did that, so we're going to go for 6 minutes here. Okay, so now we have some markers that tell us like how far along we are in our track. So initially I want my first A section, if you will, to at least go from 33 to 65-ish of space. So what do we have? Okay, so let's get our kick over first. Obviously that will be essential. Control L and then Command J to make a more easy to work with unit here. Let me rename this actually. Instead of saying Ultrabeat, I'm going to make sure that everyone in the universe knows this is our kick. Name regions by tracks. Okay, now we have a kick. Cool. So let's build up this section. And so we have percussion here. I'm going to take it. We have this yoga percussion that we did, closed hat, claps, open hats. And that's about what we have for percussion. So I'm going to take these and group them so we know we have a percussion group. Percussion. Name it percussion as you do, make it easier to see, and this will at least let us see where our percussion is. We're going to want to build the A section up to at least have pretty much the whole stack of percussion here, so it makes sense to move it over. What we have now is all right, so cool. Our initial stack of percussion, exactly what we left off in the last time. So what we want to do generally is not to start with the progression, because we have a we have 2 mid basses and a sub here. We can take these, but we don't want to just grab them wholesale, obviously. What we want to do is just to take the root note, and the root note of this song, let's remind ourselves, da da. So it actually starts on the root, which is a very handy place to be. So let's zoom in. The first 2 bars should be on the root. Given this, I am going to split the regions here and just make this regular groove. So this should be a flat groove. Cool. Okay, so that's our basic sort of mid bass and sub bass groove that'll happen here. Probably don't want to drop into all the percussion at once, but that's fine. We can get to that when we get to it. We're probably going to want this to last essentially in this form for at least 2 sections of this. We may want to drop into a progression eventually, but it's not going to happen right away. Let's get it to where we think it would drop in. What other things can we add into this to make an interesting A section? We need some acids, I think, and we might need some kind of counter melodies, and we want to pick some that will work over the main melody when we get there too, for unity in the track. So a couple things I'm going to add before we get there, take a step out, and actually, this is what happens when you do this live, and instead of planning things out, this is like, I'm just literally laying my process bare. I am going to put a crash cymbal in here just so we have something to work with for sections, because it will be really helpful in identifying where we're at. Sure, it's kind of long, but hey, it's a crash sample. So we can always change it out, and it will be at least initially a marker of where our big sections are, and we can go from there. Okay. And I'll probably want to actually put some sidechain and some interesting stuff on there, but we'll get to all that. So we probably want to start off and show off the bass line a little bit. Let's see if we can just take away the percussion. What does that sound like with just a bass line? So actually, that's a pretty nice mid-bass groove we put together last time. So that should be like a pretty nice thing to have in the intro. We'll build up some percussion. We'll get to all the percussion in by here. Then on top of that, we want to start layering some stuff. What kind of stuff can we have? I can definitely hear an acid line. Acid lines are super popular, obviously, in uplifting trance, and there's a reason for that. They drive the rhythm along, and they give you something else to kind of like have changes to groove to and stuff like that. So let's put in one of those just to get us started. I'm going to move the percussion up to make it easier to tell what is going on. I'm going to put it next to the kick. So those are all our drum elements. Okay, so acids. We could do a 303 style thing, but let's look for something a little bit more just rolling that kind of brings us along. I have one that I like to use. I've called Chord Runner. We'll see if that works, and we'll try a few and see what the best one is. So let's see. I have this acid Chord Runner. I use this one a lot. This one might work. It's a little cute for this track. Let me reorient to what the actual root is. The root is, I'll play it in and we'll see how we like it. Inspire is doing that thing where it likes to be slightly off time sometimes when you press the key. So I am going to quantize this, make this go to the end of the right place in the bar. Let me trim this. So not bad. I don't mind this sound. I want to change the pattern a little bit. So I'm going to add a couple, instead of going ba 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 ba, I want it to go ba 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 or something like that. Let's try getting another hit in there. That should be interesting. Let's get another hit in here. See what we can do for another hole. Stick that in and see. Okay, not bad. I want to try some other ones just to see where we get to too. So I'm going to put in another acid here. Spire is great for these things. I mean, we could use any synth, but these are just ones that I tend to go to very easily. Actually, strangely enough, this is a lead, but I might want to use this as an acid. So let's actually turn on the arpeggiator here. Okay, so let me just try to put this into low pass to see what we get. So that sounds pretty cool on its own. Let's try it over the groove. I like it. It's going to have a prodigious amount of bass, though, so I'm going to just give that a little whack. Okay, let's try that one too. I'm going to actually just use the same MIDI because we have the F there. So we're going to need to automate this since it doesn't have anything built into it. Give me 1 second. That's pretty good. I want to actually tighten this up a little bit, so let me change the gate a little shorter. I'm going to see if I can accentuate it a little bit more by taking down some of the notes here. Cool. I kind of think I like that one better, but we can switch back and forth. I am going to draw in the automation for that one, and then we can kind of compare. So something I like to do for setting these up is I like to take a kind of baseline value for the filter and then go from there. We already have 2 of the mod slots used, so I'm going to take one of the others and take mod 3. And I'm going to set it to filter 1 cutoff. The reason that I do this is just so I have a separate control and I can set the baseline value kind of here and then also move the filter as I see fit. Then I can adjust them kind of as independent variables. So you don't have to do it. You could just do it by automating this, but this is my style of doing things and I'm going to stick to it. So let me record that in. Okay, so that's cool. I think it needs a little more atmosphere on this. Let's see, yeah, it has 0 reverb. Try that up. I'm going to try that up an octave too. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think I do like it better. Let's compare them. Okay, versus. Yeah, that one's a little too cute. Let's get rid of that one. All right, so from the beginning. Okay, got a little sidechain on that. Cool. Okay, great element to have in there. Let's put that aside and keep moving on. We kind of need some melodics, obviously, here. This is a melodic song afterwards, and where we get to is a highly melodic, sort of emotional lead. So we definitely need some stuff that's going to go over that and kind of be pretty over this too. Let's kind of put some of those elements in, and then I think we need to build some more stuff on the acid, but let's start building up some of the melodics a little bit first here. So I can kind of hear like some classic stabs in here too. It might not be a terrible idea. We could put some against the lead to see how they sound and then port them back kind of a little bit. So we also kind of have this rhythm that we made with the mid bass. So thinking of rhythms, we have this. So bom, 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 bom. We could have a chordal thing that could go kind of goes bom, 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 bom behind that. That might be kind of an interesting thing to have. Let me try it and let's get some chords. I'm gonna go for a tried and true one first. I have this pluck that I often use for these sorts of things that I've made up. It's based on the Smile pluck that exists in the, let's see where it is, the Inspired Trance sound set, but I've modified it to work with this. So let me see if this will work just as a bass line. So I'm kind of thinking rhythmically, we're gonna need to fix the delay, but. Okay, so there's a wrong note in there, but this is what we do. We just get a package of these and we'll edit from there. Yeah, that sort of feel. Duplicate that. As cool as that is, that's not it. I do like that, actually. Actually, it's kind of an interesting, different idea. Kind of like the repetition of that. I kind of like the way that was going, but I think for this song, I want to keep it a little bit simpler rhythmically, since we have a bunch going on already. Where is that? There's like an errant note in here somewhere, and I'm not sure where it's coming from. Maybe I'm crazy. So let's see. Okay, so that's not a bad hit. I want to adjust the delay on it, but the other thing I want to try is to take the last one down a little bit to give us some dynamism to this line. That sounded pretty good. I like where that's going. There's something atonal happening in here that we need to fix, but that is a problem for later us, because I think the most important thing is getting this sort of groove feel down for this. I do like these plucks. They're kind of classic, but they kind of are doing a thing. We can try some other sounds too, but let's get this down first. Not bad. Okay, that's a good place to start. For these, let's just go through some other sounds to check, because I do like these, but you know, like trying a bunch of stuff is very good for this sort of thing. I'd rather just like be safe. Okay, let's try one or two more sounds. I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna mute the other one, and we are going to now try some other plucky sounds. I like that one. It's got this one is much more verby, but and kind of expansive, but it's kind of nice that way. That one has a lot more epicness to it. Let's keep that one. So let's get the rest of this tune arranged to get some progress under here. I want to make sure that we get enough sounds so that we have enough to arrange here, because I can see this going in a place that I'm really liking. It's got like, I think some ability that when we get forward, we can do a cool thing with the progression that'll actually really drive this tune forward. We need some like sparkly bits, like, and then we can probably use some of those against the melody line too. So what I suggest that we do is to go into the melody again, and we can think of like a kind of a counter melody that'll go against this. It'll have to be sparse since the main melody is going to obviously take up the most space. But if we do that, then we have something that we can backport kind of onto this melodic part, and then we'll kind of have a picture of where we're going. So I something sparkly like ba 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 sort of thing could be good. So let's find a synth that we could do that with. I just addicted to Spire, obviously. So I'm going to pull that up. Easiest one to work with for a lot of these things for me since I use it so much. This is one I use a lot. I think it'd be good for entering the notes, but I might want to change around the synth a little bit. I like the harmonic content of that. The problem it's going to pose for us is going to get a little in the way when we of our main melody, because the frequency ranges are actually very similar there. So I'm probably going to want to use a different octave, but I like the harmonics enough that I'm going to put that in. So yeah, it's got a nice kind of harmonic feel to that. So I like that. We're going to need to move it up in frequency in some way, either octave wise or using a different instrument. This may not be the thing that we want. So let me just try to use the octave plugin to first let's use the same synth up an octave. It's not bad, but it's kind of cheesy to me. Kind of just like loses the plot a little bit. Let's find a different synth, but I do like those notes. This one might be cool if the echoes don't get in the way. If that one had a little bit more reverb sort of feel, let's modify this. I think this can be made to work. So far that sounds good. Let's see how that actually sounds over the entire thing. I like where this is going. Let me try that instead of just verbing it out. Let's try to give it some delay to let it kind of play in there. So that sounds pretty good so far. We'll do a little bit more on that in mixing, but I like where that's going. Let's see if we can just put that on top of our groove now. Will that work as is? Who knows? Let's give it a shot. Yeah, so that's pretty good. I like where that's going. I think that what we're going to need to do is adjust a lot of the relative levels when we get to the mixing stage, but we're not there yet, and it's like not where we want to be right now. So now that we have these, I actually think we have a lot of the main stuff we want to do for the shape of our A section. So how do we get there? So let's build this up in a way that makes sense. And then we can kind of go on from there to the other parts of the song. So we're going to want to drop in from here. The kick will be out here. I'm going to mock this up for how it will get in. We'll want some kind of fill here before we come in. We'll probably have the percussion, and then we'll build up from there. We have crashes. We'll pretend that we have some kind of riser here for now. And then, let's see. So obviously we're not going to want to go into all this at once. So let's see how we can get there in an efficient sort of way. Let's see, the open hat, we're definitely going to want to kind of bring in that a little gradually. My thought is actually these stabs, we kind of want to either bring in gradually over this part, or we want to kind of take them in at the next section. So I'm going to move those over for now, and then just kind of put the acid in there. And then we're going to kind of start to build out. Of course, we'll want to be a lot more detailed when we actually get to doing this. Almost certainly we'll want to have the kick out for some portion here, so I'm going to take that away. And actually, now that we're at it, taking the kick away for like the last beat of this will make it much more dramatic. Not the kick, the percussion, because I can speak. Okay, there we go. So this is kind of the sort of thing that we want to do. Right here, we have the acid starting. We're going to be launching into this. We need to bring in the percussion a little bit more gradually. I don't think we want the entire yoga loop in initially. It's way too like present. So where are we at with the sampler? So we could raise the cutoff gradually. However, I like where that's sitting and how it interacts with the filters and everything like that. So instead of doing that, I'm actually going to go past this trash and put a single band EQ on here as essentially a filter. So. And raise this over time, because I think that will be a good way for us to kind of bring this guy in. So let me touch this. If you put things into touch mode, you can just kind of touch a control, and then the automation will appear for you here. For me, it's going to make it easier just to draw this in, because I am not graceful with a mouse, as it turns out. So I'm going to just take this and make a ramp so it kind of comes up over time. It's not perfect, but I don't think that's important. I feel like our closed hats could probably come in halfway through. Let's give that a shot. Oop, that's the wrong key. Let's give that a shot. And then let's try, I kind of like it, and this is a personal taste thing, I kind of like the old school thing where you like raise the filter slowly on hats. That just sounds good to me. So in here, we actually have a filter that's built in. So I'm going to use that built-in filter to raise what's happening with the hat, the clap. I can speak. Okay, the clap here. So let me just do the same thing, go to automation and touch this control, and then we're going to do a slow rise over this guy. So it kind of just does this to give it a demonstration. Kind of raises up the filter a little by little, just to kind of bring it in. Okay, not bad. While we were playing that back, it's hard to talk and play back at the same time. So while we were playing that back, I cut off a part of the counter melody we just made. I'm gonna actually need to raise the level on that a little bit more too, just because we can fix it with mixing, but it's a little low in the mix. So I'm gonna do that. And then in this section, is that the way I wanted to come in? I'm not actually 100% sure, but I think it's a reasonable place to start. I think in order to make this a little bit more full as an intro, a couple things we're gonna need. I wanna take this, there's an impact that I used earlier. That's this white noise thing. So let me just play how that sounds. It's like basically a clap with a crap ton of reverb on it. So I'm gonna give a copy of that, and I actually want to pump it using a side chain, and that'll give the intro some like beef. Let's see, so kickstart, oop, like that, probably about there. Let's see. So that's actually starting to take shape in a little bit of a way that I like. We're obviously going to need some sounds around this to kind of give it some meat and beef, but this is showing a direction it's going to go. The acid is definitely going to need some point and counterpoint, and we're going to need to do some stuff for just like having an atmosphere here. It doesn't have a lot of atmosphere in this track. So this acid is good alone. Let's see what we can do for like some acid hits that might kind of complement this in some kind of a way. So we need something that's either saw wave based or also a filter sweep, and a very common pattern to do is to combine a couple of these into one. So you have like something that sweeps up and another that answers it by sweeping down. So we can do something like that, and it'll be a nice little pattern to have in here. Just keep going back to my favorite. Let's see what we got for like a honky sort of sound. Any kind of saw lead sound with a filter can work, to be honest. So this is in a state of spire. I kind of like this sound. I wonder if we could take the ARP off it. This is modulated in a way that might not be great. I do like the bass of this sound. So I found a bass sound that I kind of like. I'm cutting out some bass of it, but I found this bass sound infernal. Kind of got that kind of nice slappy saw thing. Responds to that filter pretty well. Let's put some low cut on it just to make sure it's not going to get in the way of anything. But what I want to make sure we do here is make some answering calls with this. So I'm going to turn on the delay. Like the way that moves. It's also got this nice metallicness to it. Sweet. Are we already using the shaper on this? We are not. So let's give it some shape. Let's see, we got delay on it. It's got a little bit of a slap reverb, but actually that sounds pretty good to me. So let's see what we could do to make some kind of call and response over this. So I'm gonna want to go way crazier on the delay feedback for sure for this, but I actually think this has some merit. Also way too meaty, so let me just take off a little bit of the lower end here. We don't need to completely kill it, but so that sort of thing is what we're going to want to do over this. So I'm going to record that in. So it's not perfect, but I think we can work from that. That's kind of the sort of sound that I think that I wanted there. Want a little bit more filter movement there, though. That didn't get quite recorded as I like. Let's zoom in. Here's my filter movement. Let's see. Let's make this a straight line down. Cool. Okay, so obviously we're getting a lot of mid-range from this guy that we're probably want to take away a little bit of the sort of low mids from, but I think it's a good start for the sort of one of the kind of sounds we want to have in this. Okay, let's get back to the arrangement of this. So in order to actually kind of get to a point where we can see where we're going at this point, we have a couple of acids. Let me call this acid hits. Acid hits. Put two of these together. We're going to want to start to get some kind of transitional effect, because right now we're just kind of imagining that they exist. And it's really hard to make a club tune imagining everything. So what I think we want to do next is actually just get some very, very basic snare rolls in here and some whooshes and crap like that, just to kind of help us imagine what this will be like when it emerges from the womb. Okay, so I'm going to make a very basic snare roll. I have a bank that I used earlier for claps, I believe, in the sampler instrument, but this time I'm going to pull up the snare hits from Dave Parkinson. Thank you, Dave, for making these awesome samples, because they make this part easy as far as sample selection. So I'm just going to make a short-ish snare roll here. Let's find a sound. Let's do fine for getting this down. I want to do like 16th notes, so I record in some, and let's make an efficient roll here. So let's get 16th notes. Boom, boom, boom. Actually, I'm liking that snare a lot better now. Let's use that one. But we have some 16th notes here. Let me make it the length of this. Boom, boom, boom. So just copy and paste. I'll roll the last part in 30 seconds so we get kind of a tighter, like, little end to this. And then, just to make this an actual roll instead of being completely static, we're going to add some velocity automation. Okay, so that'll at least do for now. I don't think it's the most perfect snare roll, but it's a snare roll that we can use for just getting things in place. So that'll kind of get our arrangement, because I want to get us to the breakdown today. That's my goal. Okay, so that's sounding pretty good. Let's bring back our melody over this, and then what I think we want to do, that was kind of alluding to earlier, is that we want to drop into a progression, make it kind of emotional when we get here. And I think we can do that super easy, and it'll be kind of a fun thing to do before we actually go to the breakdown. So being cognizant of how much time we have on the clock here, let me move these over. I want a little bit more space for this before we reach the breakdown. I am going to bring in the full line, not quite yet. I like just using half of this, I think, for now. So let's see if we even need the other stuff. We do need to build something else here in the second part, because if it's just exactly the same, it'll be kind of like, you know, it doesn't really go anywhere. So you kind of need it to have a little bit more drama. One thing that we can do that's a super easy way to address this is to put a ride cymbal in here. So let's get some rides. Probably want to have some other elements too, but having a ride will be a good start. So let's get this in here. Let's see, I have a DPT. I have some other ride banks too, but this will be just a fast way, and everyone's got these samples. So let's go from here. What's a good ride? What'll sound good over this? I like this one. This one sounds pretty good. So let me record that in. We're going to do something to make sure we get all the tails of these two, because right now, obviously, it cuts off way too soon. Equalize the velocities. Let's make sure these are all the same. I want to make sure we get the actual full length of these notes. Let me make this longer. I still have this set to 30-second notes. Let me turn this back. It'll be easier to figure out what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Okay, so now we should have a couple bars of rides. I'm going to put them to their full length. We'll have an awkward gap here, but we'll deal with that in a second. So that sounds pretty cool. Let us take this then, and I'm going to bounce this to audio for reasons that I will explain in a moment. Okay, so we're going to bounce rides. The reason we want to do this is because there's that awkward pause kind of at the beginning of this. And kind of you want to go over the standard note values and kind of come into the next thing. You can kind of finagle this by doing fancy MIDI crap, but I would rather just cut out a piece of this audio, and then now we should have a nice smooth ride movement from here that we can just loop. Obviously, it's way too high in the mix. Let's take that down. Give it a little panning or something like that, but let's save that for the mix stage. That's nice to have that as like a little build element. Again, we'll probably want some more stuff, but what now for the thing that I've been talking about for a while, which is that now we're going to drop into a progression. This bum 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 that we have right now is just going over the root note. So let's just play with this for a second. This guy. So we have this here, but I think we can actually go down here. That was the wrong note, but you kind of get like a cool pattern for like just getting that emotion, because when that sort of thing hits, it actually is pretty effective, I find. Do that, it'd be pretty fun. All right, let me just record in that pattern, and then we'll convert it to the basses that we have. Doing this without the aid of the kick, so it's going to be a little bit off as far as my MIDI goes. Let me just actually stick a kick in there, and we'll make sure we get it in the right place. And we're going to want this to come up here. Yeah, it's a little less funky by doing it straight on like this, but I think for a trance song, probably best to do this. Okay, so now these notes, we're obviously not going to use them as is. We're going to want this to be our guide for how we kind of shape our mid basses here to kind of follow that progression. Probably gonna want some pads and stuff here to kind of start building up that vibe, but I think this will be a place to start. Okay, so let's do. I'm just gonna take one mid bass at a time. We have our first one. Let's make it match this pattern. So I'm gonna make a longer region out of this. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. So we're gonna be in a different octave. Let me just take these and make them a very different color so we can kind of make sure we can differentiate. And then I will change the octave of these as a guide. It might be a lot of movement, but I think it's going to sound good. So I'm going to go for it. Let's make this into, did it again. Make you into one region, include, and now let's do the same thing here. All right, now just we got our sub bass and then we'll be good on that. We do have some acid hits that are going to be not matched to this though, that we'll want to match afterwards, but let's get the mid basses first and then we can go from there. Sorry, not just the mid basses, but also the sub. So now it's time for the sub. Let's make a loop out of this. So now if we put the groove over this, we should actually have something that sounds pretty good chord-wise. Don't need the automation. Actually, let me. That should be pretty fun. Okay. We don't want to make sure, this is getting a little bit on the long side, so we do want to be cognizant of that since we're at like 2 minutes here. So what I'm going to do to kind of take this into the breakdown is instead of having this go full bore with all the percussion, I think we could actually have another section of this where we strip out the percussion and have it start to come down. So I'm going to just kind of put things in place to do that. Actually, let me cut out the percussion like I said I would do. Let's give ourselves some of that. We'll want another kind of massive oomph on the duct guy here. Let me give this pump noise. Let me make sure these are named the right thing. So I think that should be pretty cool. And then we can connect that to the pads and then to the melody coming in from there. So we're going to see how that works. So let me just put the pads in here as if we're starting the breakdown from here. Then our pad bass, assuming that we could get there. And then we're going to want to have some open time. The other thing I thought is we should put this counter melody that I'm going to now, instead of sequence, I'm going to call this counter, which will make it a lot easier to see what we're looking at. I'm going to put that in there, and then we'll see where we get to. Let's put it in here. We'll put the full counter melody, and we can kind of let that ring out here. So that's the one thing I'm going to say is, having done this, I actually want to take this and simplify it a little bit. And I know this is getting a little long in the video right now. So what I'm going to want to do is, I do really want to kind of simplify this. I think just having that the first part of it is going to be enough actually for this, because otherwise I think it's getting a little bit much. It's trying to do too many things. So I am going to just cut it in half, and we're just going to really have 2 chord changes here, which I think will be more effective and easier to work with a little bit as we come into the chords here. Let's try this from here. So that's the wrong period now. Okay, so let's fix this. I think that I want those, I like those two chords. Actually, the second chord is wrong. I am going to fix this to the root. So I want it to go down, and instead of going to that fancy chord, we are going to take these back to F. So we're going to take those back to the root. So that'll be the first one. I want to space them out a little more. So I'm going to make duplicates of each of them. Try this. Yes, perfect. Actually, it just proves the thing I keep saying, that simpler is better and more emotional, because it is. I am going to take away that fancy shit that we did. It's only 2 chords now, but I think it'll be pretty effective that way. Okay, so we have a snare roll here, which is a little bit of a mock-up. I want to do some sweeps and stuff like this, but we'll probably have to save those for another video, because I'm already getting long in the tooth on this one. So building out the A section is a lot of stuff, right? Let us go for just kind of closing out some filtering of this to get this to the breakdown. So that'll be kind of what I want to do next in this section here. Okay, so let me take the kick. I'm going to do another filter on the kick. I am going to use a third-party filter this time, but you could, if you wanted to, use the single band EQ like I used before, because it's actually quite good at this sort of thing. So let me just go and take this, and we're going to do some filter movement on a bunch of these things. So I'm going to use a bunch of copies of Simplon to kind of ease into the breakdown, and we'll put some pads on that. It'll kind of make it a perfect finish for everybody, I think. Okay, so for the kick, let me just see. Okay, cool. That's sort of movement, just kind of filtering up. In other words, doing a low cut or high pass on here just to get the kick out of the way. So that was an easy way to draw it in. I'm going to draw it in on a couple more of these. We're going to want to do it on the mid basses for sure as well. We may want to do some filtering from both sides, because you can kind of filter up and down at the same time, and it's very effective. For the mid bass group, I'm going to actually put another Simplon on there, and I'll probably do that double filtering. So let's try this. I'm going to do touch automation on this, and this time I am going to be lazy and draw it in. So let's open this up. Let's do kickstart 2. I'm going to touch down here. We're going to want to like have the low cut come up and then also the high cut come down. So let's click on the frequency there. The high cut is going to come down here just to give us a lot less like juice there, because we were kind of wanting to take it down to the breakdown. So that's good. We're going to want to actually get some automation on the sub here now, and this is the time to make it actually shine. So let's go in, and I am going to just, a lot of times on subs, I will just use a gain plugin, because like filtering on a sub doesn't really make that much sense. It's only like really occupying a very low frequency range anyway, so you kind of just can fade it out and fade it back in. So in this case, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this gain plugin here to take away the sub. Rather dramatic fade out. I'm not sure that we in fact need 32 decibels of reduction, but we can do a curve here in Logic, and that'll kind of smooth out everything for us in a way that makes a lot of sense. So let me do an automation curve. Didn't really have to be 32 decibels per se, but I mean, it's fine. The important part is that it get out of the way, and then we can kind of adjust from there. I think if we put like a pad in here, we'll be pretty much finished with this section in terms of like the major stuff. A couple things I will want to do We didn't really do much in terms of like kind of turnarounds and automation and very like little bits in here. And I want to come back and do that, but I also want to be cognizant of how long this video is getting. So I'll cut the percussion there. I've done a couple double kicks in places, and I think that worked. Did a little bit in the background. So here I'm going to make this a double kick as well. Let me give it a different color so I know it's doubled. And I'm going to put that here because I think that alone will kind of give us a nice transition to the next phase here. So let's focus on getting a pad in here and then adjusting our acids, at least for this part, and then we'll be able to get out of here. So actually, let me reverse that. Let's do the acids first. So I'm going to take the acids over now, and they're going to be wrong because one of them, the notes is going to be incorrect on here. So I'm going to copy the automation, come in here, and let me split this into two regions that are copies. This note is now the C sharp instead, so let's make sure it's down there. And then the same thing for this guy. We'll see how well it does with being down there. In fact, this thing is ringing out a little too much. Let me take down the shaper a tiny bit on this. Sweet, so the acids are warped. Let's do some pads now. We can start with our existing pads. I almost want to add something new, but we have like a one that's already pumped that goes with our melody. So let's use that for now, and we can kind of figure out where we want to go. We can either use our existing chords, or we can kind of come up with something new for this. I kind of want it to change when it goes into the main section, though. So that's a reason why, for me at least, I might want to try something different. So I kind of want those two notes to play around. It's going to be F actually at first, and then change up to a G sharp there. Sort of thing. Let's try that. So I only got one of the chords. Rather than play it in, just sometimes it is easier to use the keyboard. So what we have now is like those two chords, which should be pretty cool, I think. Let's try that. Might be a little soft. I want to try some new chords too. Okay, yeah, I like where that's going. It did need a little bit of twisting on this guy to get some audible stuff in the pads. I like having that one there. I wonder if we might even want one on top, and we can kind of actually have that first chord start to come in over this to give it some sort of emotion before that happens. Let's start off with this one, and we'll have it go while the ride is coming up, and we can kind of have that. Sweet. Okay. Let's see. I am going to wrap up by just doing a couple things here then. And this is a dead space for the editor to cut out, cut out. Yeah, yeah. Let me find another pad to give this some like extra beef, because this is nice and ethereal, but I almost want something a little sawier, if you know what I mean. You know, this is almost semi-embarrassing, but honestly, one of the best pads for just this sort of thing is just using Nexus, which is an easy thing to reach for. There's a million ways to make this pad, of course, because all I want is something big and saw-like. But it turns out the Nexus has this, and it's really easy to kind of work with. So this Airwave trance saws. I might need to shift the octave, but let's try these soloed for this. Yep, definitely need to shift the octave. Yep, so that as a secondary layer might be really cool. I am going to take the same, let's see, the same kickstart that we have on our other pad though, and I'm going to use that on this one too. Let me just make sure, is this pad hypnosis? So pad hypnosis, yeah, I want to make sure to cut the lows on this too. We're probably not going to want to have it all the way up. Let's try this in context. I like it. Let's get there in terms of filter movement. Maybe I'll just leave the light one in there, and then we'll kind of have heavier pads come in for this part. And we're going to do some sweep with them, because I don't want it to necessarily start in full like this. Okay, I cannot use Nexus in this mode. Let's use it in this mode. We're going to just record it in live, because I can't see my timeline. Awesome. I mean, that'll be a good kind of placeholder for what we want. I want to go in and like fix this up a little bit more, but we'll get the idea from this essentially. So let's give this, I think we're at a good place for this. Let me just kind of play back all what we have so far, and then we'll wrap up for this session, and I'll do more in a future one. So I am going to, just so we have a sort of preview of where we're going, I'm going to use this snare. I'm going to double the length of this snare build. And the way I'm going to do that is just by taking a copy of it. We don't want the 30-second notes, we just want the first part, and make a bigger version of it that goes for longer. And I'm going to redo the velocity automation to make sure it's in one. There we go. Yeah, you can see how it's funky, but we can just redo that super easy. It's because I copied it. But so we're gonna do that just to mock this up. I would want to do a much more thorough job in the end if we were doing this for real. Don't really need the 30-second notes. We're going to leave like a space here that we will then put in some variety of, I don't know, we'll put in some variety of fill sort of thing later on there. But for now, we're just going to leave it like that. We have this. I'm going to put in a quick riser. Let me just pull in something from Leviathan, which is a good pack for these sort of things. Although you can use anything because, yeah, we'll want to be a little fancier about this when we get to it. But let's use one of these 140 risers. Sure. Why not? This is big and annoying, but we're just going to have it low in the mix, and we're going to want to combine that with some other elements to kind of make up our final version of this. So I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to cut it off a bar before, so we have like enough time to like give it some breathing room. We have our snare there. I think I have a kick boom here somewhere. Let's see. Here's my kick boom. Just bring this over. I'm going to make a little version of this just so we can see what this is going to be like. And then we'll have our version for today, where we end up as far as making this track. So let's play this, and then we will be finishing up. I will get us to the breakdown, and then we'll go from there. All right, let's play it back and hear what we got. All right, and there we have it. So that's where we got. We have an A section. It still needs a little tweaking to make it perfect, of course, and we'd want to like put. I'd want to do a lot more work in the transitions, especially is kind of where this is lacking right now. But I think as a basis, this is pretty solid, and I like where we've been going with this. So yeah, stay tuned for more, and I will do the next section of this if people are into what I'm doing here. This is a very raw process, like I said before, so hopefully it isn't too raw for everyone out there. And I will catch you on the flip side. See you soon.